So, Corey, so you're no longer a student, but you did graduate from the UW?
Yeah, I went to UW-Madison. I was a history major.
History major, okay.
And, so yeah, I graduated about 1.5 years ago.
Did you take any science?
I did take some science. I was actually going to be a pharmacy major when I started.
Oh, okay.
And so I did a year of, biology and chemistry and that kind of thing.
Uh-huh. All right. So you're into this?
Yeah.
Cool.
I had a little experience with it. I don't know how much I would remember, but yeah.
All right. Great. Do you consider that evolution is true?
Yeah, I would say it is.
Okay. Is it so well established that it is a fact? Not, I know that it's a theory, but for you,
Right.
is it really well established?
You can say like it's a theory, but I think there's enough evidence to call it fact. Like I know you can't get to that point, but you can't disprove like
Right.
I don't know. It hasn't been disproven yet, and it's been taking so long. Like gravity, you can technically call gravity a theory, but it's a fact. It's a fact now. You know it's a fact.
The law of gravity.
Exactly.
Right. So, what do you consider to be the best evidence in favor of evolution?
Best evidence?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, there was that, I think, in Darwin's travels or whatever, there was that thing with I don't know if it's finches or the birds,
okay,
where their
right.
beaks conformed to the flower they were eating over time.
Right.
And, the only way that got to be is, the ones that had that change survived longer, natural selection, and eventually,
So you like the whole motif of, the birds surviving?
like niches that they fit into their, animals find something that makes them, or not find, but they're given something that makes them better able to survive.
In that environment?
And so they thrive
Mm-hmm.
in their environment, and it's naturally picked, that trait is naturally picked
Okay.
to, continue on because it helped them survive.
Okay. So have you ever seen any documentaries or read anything regarding intelligent design?
I don't know, maybe anecdotally, just maybe some articles or something.
Can you do you understand what it is, what the basic idea of intelligent design is?
There's some outside force
Okay.
that is intelligent, however you would define that,
Okay.
that has pushed along or helped the process of evolution or the process of life, however you would describe it. I guess that's my understanding of it.
Yep. So going back to the evolution thing, it always seems kind of amazing to me that people have accepted evolution to be so well established. And yet, personally, I don't find it to be very convincing at all.
Okay.
And I was wondering, can you convince me? What would you do?
I don't think I would be the one who could convince you. I don't think I have enough information about it.
Okay.
I don't know. I would take the word of scientific community. I know how it is a little bit, like just from the classes that I've taken in science, what you have to do, and with peer reviews and
all the
there's a
rigor that
community
goes into it.
that rigorously
That's right.
looks at everyone else's pieces, and
Okay.
it's a community effort.
Right.
And I think it's like evolution is one of the things there's very little argument about in the scientific community.
Okay. Uh-huh.
And I mean that's pretty much you take that as fact. I mean
That's right.
So that's how I would. I don't know. I don't know if that convinces you. I doubt it does. But
No, of course it doesn't. But in a way, that's one of the things that I think is very true, is that evolution has gotten to this point where there's this huge consensus that it's true, and so it doesn't really need to be examined critically anymore, because, well, we just pretty much assume that it is true.
Right. I guess, I don't know, my argument against intelligent design or creationism or anything like that would have to be, I don't disagree with, it's entirely possible. I would give you that it's possible, but it's kind of like a God is in the gaps type thing.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout history, people have attributed what they can't explain to God. And then we've later found out, no, it wasn't. It was this thing.
Okay.
And then, there's people who go after you find it out, well, what about this other thing? And I go, well, that must be God. And eventually that's figured out as well. And I think there's things we won't know in our lifetimes, obviously. And just to say that you know it, to say that it's God, is kind of I don't know, I feel like you would suspend your intelligence for a moment.
Okay.
And instead of trying to figure out what it is, you just say it's
say
God and it's over.
Right. All right. That is a really interesting argument. I think that is used very frequently. It's something I want to come back to if we have time. But I want to change the direction a little bit and talk a little bit more about evolution itself.
Okay.
Can you give us your understanding of how evolution works biologically? Where does it happen?
Okay. This is going back a little bit. From what I understand about it, it works through DNA. And
that is correct.
Small changes in DNA over long periods of a species' life make it more suitable for reproducing or less suitable for reproducing. And through natural selection of those traits.
You're giving the bigger picture. I want you to go back to DNA. How does it work in DNA? What are the mechanisms for change in DNA, through DNA?
I mean, I don't know if it's the chromosomes or I can't remember exactly what they are. The bases.
No, you're doing good. Let me help you a little bit. Okay, so in DNA, chromosomes, like for humans, there's 23 pairs, 46 total chromosomes. And then there's genes, which are like sections of information that are used for coding for proteins.
Right.
Okay, but going back a little bit further, smaller than the genes are those 4 nucleic acids. Yeah. So there's the A's, C's, T's, and G's. And so that's where the mutations happen. All right, so I just gave you one clue. Okay, so we're talking about DNA, we're talking about in those 4 nucleic acids, mutations are critical for evolution. What else are mechanisms for evolution?
That's all I had was the DNA.
Okay,
I'm
well,
not sure.
2 other things that I can think of is one is time, and the other is natural selection. And so you were already kind of talking about natural selection. I'm not sure that they really understand the capability of natural selection. It's because, like, I think a good example would be a petri dish for bacteria. So you know what a petri dish is, right? Okay, and so you got all this bacteria in there, and it's growing. It duplicates very, very rapidly, and so a scientist may put an antibacterial medicine in, and the medicine hopefully kills all the bacteria. That's what the doctors want, and that's what we as patients want. We want to kill the bacteria. But in that particular environment, you may get certain bacteria that survive. Okay, now what is it that's the advantage for that bacteria? Did they somehow evolve? Did they? And the answer is not as people traditionally think. They are not more intelligent. They are not somehow better or more advanced than the other bacteria, but they survived. And usually what happens is because of a mutation that there's a tweak to a protein or something, and it enables that bacteria to survive in that particular environment. And so the mutation is kind of a corruption of the code, but in this particular environment, it allows it to survive. Okay, so that is my understanding of how natural selection works and how it works in DNA. Because in DNA, the various kinds of mutations that can happen, you can have a single point mutation where it will be replaced by a different letter, nucleic acid. You can grab a section and copy it and paste it essentially somewhere else, duplicated somewhere else. I do believe that they've shown that you can get maybe DNA information through a virus, and that information can be grabbed from another bacteria or some other host and then kind of attached to this one bacteria. So you can get new information that way. But its limitation is to things like that. Well, you're deleting something, you're deleting a letter, you're copying a couple letters, that sort of thing.
Okay, sounds familiar.
Okay, all right. So, but to me, this raises a very important question of how can evolution really produce something novel, something that didn't exist before. So let's suppose we're starting off in a world. The world is, there's no life except for bacteria. That's all there is in the world. Bacteria is the simplest form of life that we know of. Do you know what the next form of life is, what the next level higher is? It's a eukaryotic cell.
Okay.
So you have prokaryotes, which are bacteria, and then you have eukaryotes. And with the eukaryotes, you've got a nucleus where there's a cellular membrane, and you have a variety of organelles, the lysosomes, Golgi bodies, the mitochondria, a variety of other organelles that are part of eukaryotic cell. So the question then is, so we're starting off with this world of just bacteria, and the next step is a eukaryotic cell. That is not just a step. It is like it is like going from a go-kart to a Mercedes-Benz. It is a huge leap in advancement. It would require volumes of information to go from the prokaryote to the eukaryote. So, going back to evolution, what are the mechanisms for evolution in order to produce that? So if evolution is true, and it had to have started with a bacteria or something like bacteria. And I think evolutionists will basically say that it was like that for 1 billion years or so, and then eventually you get this eukaryotic cell. So they give themselves time, a great deal of time, for this next level. And it was my understanding is that they would say that well, you're not going to go directly from a bacteria to a eukaryotic cell. You're going to create something like a mitochondria. You're going to create one of the organelles first, and then you're going to add others and things like that. Well, we don't have any evidence of that, but that's the conjecture. That's the theory behind it. But even to create one organelle, the amount of information is staggering. Okay? And I'm going to go into that a little bit further. But let me first say, regarding information, whether it is on a cup or in a card, in a book, in a computer, wherever we see information, where does that information come from?
Us, that's
humans.
Some point. Yeah.
Humans, that's right. And if you were to go out to a beach, Lake Mendota, and you would see a great big heart with the words "I love you" written in it, and an arrow drawn through it, would you ever think that heart with the words "I love you" came as a result of the waves, or from wind or the sun or something like that? But the waves do produce things like they'll produce like ripples in the sand, things of that nature. So it has capability of producing patterns. But to produce that particular pattern would be highly, that would be really, really amazing, right? So then to think, oh, what about DNA? DNA, which is, Bill Gates says that we don't even have the capability to produce the kind of programming that is in DNA. As humans, we don't have that kind of capability. We cannot, at this time, produce life. So it's a very, very detailed kind of information. So there's a guy named Dr. Werner Gett, and he describes information that wherever we see it, whether it's a cup, a sign, a book, whatever, wherever we see this information, it's in 5 levels. Okay, so I'd like to go through it real quickly.
Yeah, sure.
All right. So first level is that of statistics. And so suppose you see a bumper sticker and it has 16 characters and 3 words, and there's a certain font and size and color. It's just statistical information. The next level is that of syntax, in that those letters are not there randomly, but they're arranged in a very specific order to form words and phrases, and in greater amount of text, you've got paragraphs and sentences and periods and all that grammar stuff. So it's syntax is rules, and so these letters are there conforming to these rules. So whether it's the English language or whether it's DNA, there's still rules. Third level is that of semantics, in that there's meaning. Again, those letters are not arranged randomly, but they're arranged in such a way to provide meaning, meaningful words, and message. So you've got sentences and paragraphs, and they are designed in such a way to present a message, right? Fourth level is that of purpose, in that we have a daughter, and when she was younger, we bought a bicycle and had to assemble it, and had this long list of assembling instructions, and I discovered that, wow, it really is a completely different level of complexity. I could read and understand those words, but then to actually use those words to assemble these pieces and put together the bicycle. It was very, very different. And then the fifth level is that of purpose. And so you've got these people that write the directions to help parents put together bicycles. Wherever you see information, there's all 5 of these levels. You may debate some of them, but clearly 3, 4 of those levels are very clearly there. And so it is with DNA. That in DNA, you have 4 characters. You have statistics. You have where these characters are arranged in specific ways to provide instructions for the amino acids to get formed into proteins, which then get turned and formed into organelles or speed up other processes in the cell. They do amazing things. There's all kinds of application going on inside the cell. So then I like to ask the question, where do you suppose that kind of complex information came from?
Sure, I mean, I wouldn't be able to answer that, but if I could turn it around and ask the very same question, I mean, if you're holding intelligent design up to the same critique you would hold evolution up to,
yes,
where is the mechanism for intelligent design? And it would be the same criticism you would have of not being able to explain every single part of evolution. So for that reason, you should throw it away. But there's no, the intelligent design or creationism side of it, there's no questioning it. There's no because it's impossible to prove. So there's no, like I said earlier, you have to suspend your critical thinking skills for a minute and just say it's God, or it's this ethereal intelligence that exists that is controlling things in a way we can't understand or can't know.
Okay, so you made a very good point that it still feels to you like it's God in the gaps.
Yeah.
And so where's the evidence in favor of design?
Right.
So I really do want to go back to that whole issue of God in the gaps. Okay?
Yeah.
All right. So I have here something to show you. So what do you see here? What are these 2 items?
A rock and a penny.
A rock and a penny. Okay, so we have this rock and a penny. And in your mind, were either of these intelligently designed?
Penny was.
Okay, and how can you tell? What makes you think that?
Well, just because I know it was made by humans.
How did you see it get formed?
No.
Well, how do you know then?
Well, I know the Treasury Department prints the
Prince
money and Prince pennies,
and if you were to examine it,
president on it.
Abraham Lincoln. Right. It has words "In God We Trust." So there's a recognizable pattern. and there's these words and so on.
Sure.
Now, as far as the stone, do you think this is intelligently designed?
No.
Just random, right?
Sure.
Okay. This is the world in which we live. We live in a world where there are two options for design. One is that things were intelligently designed, and the other option is things were not intelligently designed. Okay, are you following me now?
I am following you, but I think, well, I don't know, I might be reaching on this one, but the intelligently designed penny was also, I think, a result of a randomness in the universe that created human thought and human experience in order for us to be able to make the penny intelligently. Does that make any sense?
Well, you're coming from a very deterministic point of view from evolution, I think. So, anyway, from my point of view, what I see is that we live in a world where there's two options, design and no design. But when you get to school, you look at things from a biological point of view or a chemistry point of view. In the university, there's only one option. And do you know what that option is?
I would imagine scientific.
Not design.
Not design?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
See, we live in a world where living things look like they're designed. They act like they're designed. They have every characteristic of design.
But how would you teach design?
But in the university setting, there is no option for design. The only option is not design. That everything came by natural causes. So, now we're getting to this whole thing of God in the gaps, all right? So, if in the university setting or high school setting, the evidence was laid out so that design and not design were each offered on a level playing field, where people were given the option to look at, okay, here's the evidence from the fossil record. What is the evidence that favors evolution? What is the evidence that favors design or creation?
Yeah, but I don't think that you could offer them on a level playing field. They're two totally different ways of thinking. So there's not design, as you would call it, which has, like you said, fossil records or like concrete evidence that can be presented. To teach design, you have to first say that this is like, you have to first believe in a bottom line that you have to suspend your, there's no proof for. So you have to accept that there's an intelligent being before you can start presenting whatever evidence there may be for intelligent design. And I think it's that base assumption that can't be proven or taught. So I don't think you could ever offer both of those on a level playing field in schools.
Very interesting comment. So follow me for a second. Let's go back to origin of life. What is the evidence in favor of life? Life coming from non-life. There isn't any. Let's go back another step.
Wasn't there that experiment with the primordial soup and the electricity, and he actually made
essentially what he was able to
create
create from that a few amino acids, but the result was a tar-like substance. And so it is touted as evidence for this whole thing, but they've never been able to produce anything like life, anywhere close. A few amino acids out of the 20 left-handed amino acids is not anywhere near life. If we were to go back another step, from an evolutionary point of view, you would have to have the existence of all that exists, the existence of the universe. What is the evidence that all of the universe came from nothing?
I don't know of the evidence.
There isn't any evidence. There's supposition, there's postulations that, well, maybe there was a we live in a multiverse.
Sure.
That there's, but that's not evidence. So what they've done is they've assumed that there is no God. And I'm suggesting that, well, you see, people have a choice in either case, it's a matter of faith. Either you believe that there is no God, or you believe that there is a God. In both instances, the foundation to these questions is a matter of faith. There is no evidence for the universe coming out of nothing.
I wouldn't agree with saying there is no God.
Okay.
But at the same time, I can't agree with saying there is a God.
Okay.
And I know agnostics get a bum rap, but that people say it's a cop-out. But you can't, I don't know, you can't know. I don't think you can know whether it's science or intelligent design or creationism, whatever. But
one could discover a preponderance of evidence. And I think that for me, I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I feel that as someone who is concerned about this topic and has done a fair amount of research, that people are overwhelmingly accepting evolution as fact because that's how it's taught. Because that is what the prevailing view is from the media and from education and so on. But if one really realistically looks at it and starts to consider what is the evidence for either design or for not design, a whole new world can open up to you. Do you have any religious background? Did you grow up?
I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic grade school, Catholic high school.
Okay.
And still, when I go home, I go to church because, you know, my mom's still Catholic.
Okay, I hear you. All right. Going back to, and maybe we can close up here real quick. I know that we're not going to change the world here, but in terms of the issue of DNA and what we were talking about in relation to that, wherever you see information, it's in 5 different levels, and that we're talking about going from, say, beginning life of, say, a bacteria and then moving on to something like a eukaryote. Do you see that is kind of a jump?
Oh, sure. I definitely see there's a big jump. There's a lot of things that we haven't figured out yet in all of science. Mm-hmm. And I would just say that I choose to put my faith in the scientific camp.
Yes. Because
I receive from it practical, applicable knowledge, and most modern society is based off the results of scientific theories that turned out to be right.
Okay. I'd just like to adjust what you're saying a little bit. Mm-hmm. I very much believe in science, and I very much want science taught.
Okay.
And so when you say that you put your faith in science, I would rather that you said, or like to correct you in saying, what you're putting your faith into is an evolutionary view of science, rather than, say, in contrast to a creation view of using science.
Sure.
So for me, science is critical. And so this whole issue of God in the gaps it doesn't exist. It's, I see that the problem is that of how this whole topic is taught, in that it's taught in such a way that there is no critical thinking, that there is no other option. We live in a world where things are intelligently designed and other things are not. But when it comes to science, all we are given is this one point of view. I think it's unfair, and I think that it does not help people to think critically. It doesn't help people to seriously consider, well, what if God exists? What would be or where is there evidence? Even asking those questions. Is there evidence? And what evidence is there in favor of design? And in this case, yeah, we're talking about an all-powerful God. So if we were to assume if God exists, how would he create the world? What would be signs that he did do it? And I think DNA is a very powerful source of evidence to say it's like a fingerprint that God is the originator of, of life and human beings. From my point of view, evolution is essentially powerless. Aside from adaptability within its own kind, such as bacteria. So bacteria can adapt. They adapt very, very rapidly. They adapt very, very well. But where's the evidence for bacteria becoming something more advanced, something like a eukaryote? Anyway, it's been a pleasure, talking to you. It's the longest conversation I've had thus far, definitely.
Good.
So Corey, it's been a real treat.